video with ya boy, the OG Frenchie. I am a knife-making robot. Why am I out here dancing? Why am I excited? Because this is part 3 of the TANTO and SCABBARD build. Oh boy, yeah. Settle it on down. Let's get this episode started. I have my blade in a vise here towards the edge of the table, and that kind of helps me to get at this without having to get around a bunch of stuff. When it comes to hand sanding, that I wanted to talk about was what kind of a backer you use for your hand sanding. So I have different backers here. This is like a piece of plastic, and it's got, you know, it's somewhat rigid, but it's got a little bit of bend to it. But it's hard, and that's going to be really good for doing stuff like this where you want to keep this angle going up and down, and you don't really want to wash out the lines that you have in your blade or in your handle, depending upon what you're doing. Something like this, a hard backer, is excellent for that. You could also use a block of wood or, you know, whatever else you could find, but it is really important to choose the right backing material for the right job. Now that we're done hand sanding, we're pretty much at a good stopping point now. It's not perfect. I did bring it up to about 400 grit, and I got a lot of those lines to just be going this way. So it kind of gives it a satin finish. The next step that we're going to do is be cutting off the end of this tang. It's a little bit long for the grip that I have currently. And once we get that cut off, we're going to mark them out on the handle and then cut out the slot for the tang. So now we're going to get out the router thingy, whatever the heck it is. It's like a little handheld type thing. So yeah, we're going to get that out, and we're going to go ahead and start cutting out the tang. Now that we have the slots for the tang cut out of the handle, we're ready to move to the next step. Now, I think what I'm going to do is add a spacer in between these pieces of wood. I have this pretty thin brass here that I'm going to be using, and I think it's going to really give it a unique look. I thought about doing the scabbard as well, and I still might, but I'm definitely going to be doing it to the handle. You'll kind of get that sort of a brass strip on the handle, which will be really cool tying it in to the guard of the knife, since you'll be able to see that, and then you'll see that little strip all the way around the handle. I think that that's going to be really cool looking. And this brass is relatively thin, so it's not really going to mess up anything. And it sounds pretty cool too. Yeah, so when I'm done messing around with the brass banjo, we're going to move on to sticking this into the handle. So just annealed the tang so that we can drill a hole through it. I tried drilling a hole through it earlier and forgot that it's still in its hardened state. So this technique right here works really well. You just pretty much protect the blade portion by keeping it in cool water while you heat up the section that you want to anneal. We're just going to let this cool down slowly, and hopefully that should soften it up. I have a whole video pretty much dedicated to annealing a hardened blade or metal, hardened metal in general. If you're interested in that, I'll try to link a link to it up here. Link a link, post a link. I'll stick my finger in the link and you guys can check it out if you're interested. Okay, so to bring you up to speed, we got the tang annealed and we finally got a hole through the tang. It went really smooth. The annealing process worked really well. So let me go ahead and show you kind of what the construction of this looks like on the inside. So we have our brass layer here. It's super duper thin brass, just kind of sheet brass, but we do have a bunch of holes that I drilled in here, and my thinking here is that it gives the epoxy a place to kind of sit in each one of these holes, and then having the holes in this as well as the other side of this, it'll all kind of connect. It pretty much just gives the epoxy a little bit of gripping power in between all three pieces. So I think that overall it should be pretty sturdy when we go to glue this up. So we're going to jump to the scabbard next before we glue this up. And it's pretty much the same process. We're going to just trace out the blade on the wood and get that cut out and move from there. Now that now that we have the scabbard cut out and we have the holes drilled in there just for a place for the epoxy to go, we're ready to glue this thing up. I'm not going to be using epoxy for this. I was thinking that epoxy is just messy, and if it were to get inside here, it'd be kind of difficult to get it out in time without, you know, creating a mess or bumping this thing around. Anyway, we're going to be using some Titebond 2 premium wood glue. So I'm hoping that God, that sucked. Premium wood glue. Titebond. Take two. Jesus. So we're going to be using some Titebond 2 premium wood glue. So we just got the clamps off of the SCABBARD, and now we are pretty much ready to move to shaping this thing out. It went really well. The glue up worked pretty good. Everything is really in line really well. And the Habaki does a pretty good job of keeping this thing in there pretty well. Super easy going in up to about here, and then you just kind of give it a bit of a push, and then it holds it in place pretty well. Hopefully that will hold up over time. Only time will tell, but you know, for now, I think so far we have a great success with this. So we're going to jump right into getting this thing shaped out and putting an edge on it. All right, so we're going to throw the mask on, and with a 60 grit belt, we're going to start shaping the handle and the scabbard. Let's do it. Now that we're done running this over the belt grinder for a little bit, just moving the extra material off of there, getting this thing squared back up, we're ready to cut bevels in on the corner to make it a more comfortable grip. To do that, I'm going to be utilizing an 80 grit belt and just threw together kind of a homemade work rest here. This is going to hopefully allow me to get a really good flow across the belt and hopefully have a good transition in between the handle and the scabbard. Before we do that, I did want to say thanks to David Moon Forge. I just bought this shirt on his website. It is a wicked cool shirt, awesome logo, really good quality shirt at a reasonable price. If you're not familiar with him, go check him out on YouTube. He makes some incredible knives and kind of teaches and talks about what he's doing, similar to my channel. So go check him out if you haven't seen him before. You'll be glad you did. Let's get back to making this knife. Okay, so after spending a little bit of time running this thing back and forth on the belt grinder, we pretty much put just bevels running along the sides here of the handle and the scabbard. And I think for the most part, it turned out pretty good. There's still going to be some evening up to do in certain spots with hand sanding. But yeah, I think overall it's going to be pretty cool. And then we kind of have just this way to end it down here with some different patterns of just hitting it up on the grinder in certain ways. I think it kind of gives a cool look to the end of the scabbard. The only thing that I've done off camera was just taking some of the length of the handle off. I just took about an inch or so with the hacksaw. It was really a little bit too long and wasn't really proportional to the scabbard. So what we're going to do now is just run this flat end on the grinder and kind of mimic what we did down here. And then we're going to be putting an edge on this thing and she'll be ready to rock and roll. I can't wait to get this thing sharp and give it a test. All right, so now that we're to the point where I've got this blade pretty much done shaping as far as the handle and the scabbard goes, I'm now kind of looking at the finer detail work. I did previously hand sand up to about 400 grit. That ain't gonna cut it. So I am back over here at the hand sanding station, and I am hand sanding up to about maybe 1,000 grit or so. The satin look was okay, but I think it's going to look a little better with more, not an extreme mirror polish, but something definitely a little more shiny, a little more shing worthy. Another thing to note too is I've been kind of messing around with some different ideas on how to kind of treat the handle and the scabbard. So I have some boiled linseed oil here in a mason jar. And then my other option would be food grade mineral oil. You know, I've used both on different projects, and I took this cutoff piece that I had, and on one side I did the boiled linseed oil, and on the other side I did the mineral oil. So I think it's probably hard to pick it up in camera, but I thought that this might be a good thing to throw in the video. The boiled linseed oil is really good. It helps kind of saturate the wood and protect it long term, kind of gives it a, you know, just a good finish for protection. But it does have the tendency to darken up wood because it's kind of a brownish tint anyway. So that's the side that I did the boiled linseed oil on. And the side that I did the clear mineral oil is really clearly lighter. And I really like this look a lot better. So I'll probably be using the mineral oil to treat the wood once we're done. Now that we're done hand sanding and this is up to a shing quality, we're going to etch my maker's mark on there. To do that, I'm just using some alligator clips, a 9-volt battery, and some salt water. So we're going to do that real quick, and I'll cut it back on once we have it etched. Okay, so we got this thing etched, and what I've been doing lately, at least on the last couple of knives, is I've been taping up the logo after we etch it, and then I've been doing just like a Q-tip full of this brass black and putting it down into the part that's etched, and that really helps get the metal darker, pretty much blackens it. So it's still going to blacken the part that isn't etched, but once we run over this with some sandpaper to clean up the surface part, then what's left underneath the etch part will remain black. So that's a pretty good tip. If it's something that you haven't tried and you want a really dark maker's mark, then you should give it a go. Okay, so now that we've got the brass black off of there, we just ran over it with some 3000 grit sandpaper. We've got a nice shine to it, and that can kind of give you an idea of what the brass black does to the maker's mark. Pretty much just darkens it up some. We got a little bit of, fine-tune work up here to kind of clean it up a little bit more, but after that, we'll be ready to test this thing out. So now, with the help of some fine grit sandpaper, some Flitz metal polish, and our little miniature buffing wheel over here with some white compound, we now have this thing polished out pretty good. And I went ahead and ran it all the way down the blade, and here's a shot of the maker's mark that is still dark. So overall, I think it looks pretty good. We're now ready to put an edge on this thing and wrap this video up. So we're now set up to sharpen this knife, and just kind of doing my sharpening system here. I'll run through that real quick. It's basically using my 1x30, running through different belts, and then down here in the vise I have just like a 90-degree round bar that comes over and then rest at the end of this table, and I have different shims to kind of raise or lower the angle, and then I'm just utilizing like a clamping type thing on here to pinch the blade, and that way when I run it across the belt I have a nice, consistent pull. And I pretty much have the belt at about 0 degrees, and then can use this little angle finder to find where our angle's at. This particular one, you can see, is just shy of 20. It looks like 17 or 18 degrees roughly, which should be a pretty good angle for this bevel. So we'll throw it up here and get an edge onto this blade. So now that we've put our secondary bevel, or the cutting edge, down the long side, we're ready to do this tip. And to do that, I've pretty much just stuck it in here and had the part that we're going to be sharpening parallel to this, and then just kind of added a little spacer roughly the same thickness for this clamp to be able to hold on to it. So now we're ready to sharpen the point here. All right, we've made it to the end of the TANTO build. I am so glad that I chose to do this project. I think this thing turned out wicked cool. I think overall my favorite part about this thing is the wood. The teak is just a beautiful wood. It's got, the different color grains in it, and I was able to use the mineral oil just to kind of help shine it up and get those different patterns in the wood to kind of pop out and jump out at you. Just overall really cool. We had a pretty good run at getting this thing polished and putting our maker's mark on there. It's definitely looking better than the 400 grit that I was originally going to do. So overall, it's just a really clean look, and I'm glad that I chose to polish it up a little bit more. If you're watching to the end of this video, I really appreciate it. I hope that you got some enjoyment or entertainment out of the video. I'm going to be sending this off down to Florida to my grandfather for his birthday / Christmas gift. So if you happen to catch this, Papa, before it hits your way, just know that it's coming to you. I had a lot of fun making it, and I hope that you get some enjoyment out of it. Let's go ahead and give it a quick test and cut a water bottle and maybe a paper towel roll, some paper. We'll see what this thing can do. Definitely cuts paper good. Let's try a water bottle. Definitely cut through the water bottle. Let's try a paper towel roll. Let's try a paper towel roll. Oh, that went flying. Definitely cut the paper towel roll.